Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about using experiential learning to develop and refine coaching skills. Can I just check that you're able to hear me? That's good. Okay, we've just got confirmation there that people are hearing what's going on. My name's Ann Alder. I'm one of the directors of RSVP Design, and I've been involved heavily in developing materials, but also a lot of facilitator training, coach training, and trainer training in one form or another. And what we wanted to do today was just to give you some thoughts and ideas about using experiential tools to support the development of coaching skills. I'm going to be working with my colleague Laura, who is out in Latvia at the moment. And Laura is going to be keeping an eye on the chat box, so feel free to put any comments or questions in there. And from time to time, I might ask you to just give us some of your thoughts and responses through that box. I'm also aware of the fact that a lot of people will choose to use this webinar as a recording at a later stage. So a small number of you listening live, please do take advantage of asking questions and so on. My aim is to inspire you to use some different activities and resources. It's not to teach you coaching. However, you may find some of these tools and techniques useful in your own coaching practice, and it may be that you want to use them to help others, particularly, for example, operational managers, in developing their own skills, helping them to become more confident and effective coaches. So, I'm not going to teach you to coach, neither am I going to steer you towards a particular coaching model. And I'm sure there are so many that you're familiar with. I did a quick look up on the internet just in advance of this webinar and realized that there's a set of initials for just about every letter of the alphabet. There's GROW and T-GROW and CLEAR and Coach and Oscar and Fuel and you name it, there is a coaching model. However, I think whilst these might superficially be different, there are a lot of things that are consistent threads throughout those models, which are about the fundamental principles of coaching. And it would be interesting just to hear from you any thoughts you might have about what some of those core skills and core principles of coaching are. So maybe you could use your chat box and just, if I give you a minute, just think about it. The question really is, what would you see as being the consistent threads, the common themes that would be covered across a whole range of different coaching models, particularly in relation to the skills and the competencies that the coach requires? So if I just give you a minute or two, I'll keep an eye on the chat box and I'll see whether we've got any kind of common understanding there. Okay, yeah, there's things coming in already from Katie. Thank you, Katie. The key is active or global listening, listening, questioning. Anything else? Okay. Some of the things that I've been thinking about as being those common threads relate to a set of intentions, I guess, in coaching. And maybe, Laura, if you could click onto the next slide for us there. These seem to me to be some of the common threads. First of all, coaching depends on the establishment and the refinement of a personal goal. What is it that the person being coached is working towards? What do they want to achieve? At some point in the model, there will be an assessment of the current situation, whether that's the reality phase of GROW or it's an assessment of the current situation, moving into a clarification of the desired situation. There'll be some exploration of options, potential ways forward, and then a narrowing down of those and a selection of an appropriate option. I think fundamentally important, the coach needs a mindset about movement to action. The conversation, the dialogue, the discussion is useful, but what is it that we're going to do as a result of this? And of course, ongoing motivation and support for the person being coached in achieving that. So If we take those kind of fundamental skills, setting personal goals, listening actively and effectively and non-judgmentally, choosing and using appropriate questions, helping to generate a range of ideas and options, moving towards action and refining action steps, which of those things do you experience coaches having the most difficulty with? What are the sort of common difficulties encountered, particularly by inexperienced coaches? And again, if you want to respond, please do so. I'll give you a minute just to pop an answer into your chat box. What do inexperienced coaches tend to find the most difficult aspects of coaching? Okay, David, thank you. Handling objections? Absolutely. And from Katie, not giving advice. Yeah, I think that's a big one, Katie. How often when we're coaching or teaching coaching skills do we hear people kind of sticking a hand on the forehead and saying, oh no, I've done it again. I've given my opinion, or I've given advice. Absolutely, Kim, trying to remain objective and not share your own experience. It's very easy to get sucked into storytelling. From Bianca, thank you, finding the right questions. Absolutely. Following your intuition, but also keeping that intuition focused. And again, Katie, yeah, lovely, being comfortable with silence. Absolutely. So let's just go back to some of the very sort of basic models there. That's fine, Laura, thank you. One of the things that we can do is we can give people confidence in their listening and their questioning. Now, this is not rocket science, but really pushing people to practice and rehearse their active listening skills, their reflective listening skills, and also, as one of you mentioned before, trying to find the right question. There are all sorts of different activities that you could do for that, but one of the things that I find particularly useful is encouraging people to use pictures as the stimulus for a conversation. In my experience, when we try to set up practice coaching conversations, it can be quite difficult actually to find an appropriate level of topic to work with. If you ask people to present an actual real life problem or concern or goal that they're working towards, there is always the potential for that to become quite difficult. An inexperienced coach may feel bogged down and not know where to go with it. On the other hand, if the topic is too superficial, then the coach doesn't get the opportunity to really develop the range of questions, and particularly that what I call the movement to action. So using pictures is safe, neutral ground. And obviously a very simple kind of questioning process is to ask people to work in pairs, to have a coach and a speaker, and for the coach to ask the person to choose pictures and then respond to them. Now, this is not coaching in the sense of having a goal to work towards, but it's practicing those skills of listening and questioning. So they may be encouraged to ask a whole range of different questions to see what gets different responses from the person being coached. Not just why did you choose the picture, but does the picture elicit any powerful memories? Is the picture important for some particular reason? Does the picture have significance now or from the past? And encouraging those kind of questions that draw out answers and responses from the speaker, and then you can move into, obviously, the listening skills. Do they have the ability purely to listen? Can they reflect back, confirm understanding, clarify and summarize what's been said? Can the listener avoid the pitfall of, I understand that, that's just like when something happened to me, or yeah, that's really interesting, I agree with you. Once the initial questioning and listening session has been complete, it's interesting then to switch over the roles and ask the person who was speaking, who was listened to use a coaching process to help the coach. So you can then move into a more formal, if you like, coaching process along the lines of, so what would you like to try and improve about your coaching? Thinking about what you've just done there, is there a particular goal in your coaching that you would like to work towards? Tell me what you noticed about the way in which you coached me through the conversations and the pictures there. Is there anything that you could do differently? Are there changes that you'd like to make to your own approach? If we were going to have a further conversation with you in the role of coach, is there anything that you might like to work on? So it's a simple example of using pictures initially to practice the listening and questioning skills, and then to give the opportunity for coaching to be used to help the person to think about how to develop those listening and questioning skills. Okay, let's move on. One of the things that can be particularly difficult for inexperienced coaches is developing a range and variety of questions. Sometimes they get stuck with a pretty limited range and don't know what to ask next. And one of the things that RSVP does have available is a whole range of tools that give ideas and perhaps new perspectives on the kind of questioning that might be used. There are, for example, in the picture you're looking at on the top left there, a whole range of packs of coaching cards. Now, these have actually been developed using the Simple Grow model. And they come as a kind of beginner set, an intermediate set, and an advanced set. I've got here the advanced set. And on each of these cards, packs, there are a whole set of different questions around the goal. Okay, so for example, what needs to happen for you to feel this time today is well spent? What precisely do you want to achieve? What's worth preserving from your current situation? What specific part of this topic do you want to work on today? You've told me in the past what you don't want. What is it that you do want? So, just simple examples. And the same applies to questions about the reality phase, the options phase, and the way forward phase. This is a really neat little tool just for a coach to have that pack of cards available. Pull out a card, see whether it inspires a new question. Picture on the top right is something that is a set of coaching cubes. These are 6 cubes, as you can see in the box. Each face has a different question on it. And one of the things that can be quite fun to do is to simply roll the dice and come up with a random question that can be dropped into the coaching conversation at different stages. There are different types of question for the different stages. And that can sometimes move a coach who's getting stuck into a new set of questions. And then the bottom picture, we have a set of coaching cards, again based on images, called points of view. And these are designed to act as kind of random picture, new perspective, innovative idea, particularly useful and helpful in the generating options phase of any kind of coaching process. So the key to using any tools like this is to give the coach responsibility for personalizing the questions. We're not suggesting that they work through an absolutely fixed set, but we're suggesting that they may need some inspiration and support in creating the right questions for this coaching situation that they're in. So this is just to draw your attention to a whole range of tools I've talked briefly about 3 there. There are many more than that on the RSVP Design website. Okay, so I would like to move on to thinking now about the full coaching process, not just some of the specific listening and questioning, but some of an activity that enables people to work through the full coaching process. And one of the things that we've had a great deal of success with at RSVP is an activity we call the mystery object. This is based around some mystery objects, as you can see there. And the idea is that people work in pairs or in trios with an observer. One person is a designer and the other works as their coach. And they're given a goal. The goal is to develop a new product idea based on the stimulus of the object that they're working with. As the coach works towards the generation of a preferred idea that could be taken forward and developed, they actually follow through each of the steps in the coaching process. And what I'd like to do now is just to give you a quick demonstration of that, working with my colleague Laura. Are you up for that, Laura?
Yes, I am.
You are. Okay. So, Laura, I'm going to ask you to choose one of these objects just as the stimulus for our conversation. Which one would you like to go for?
I think I will go with the one on the left.
The one on the left, okay. Now, I've told you that the sort of overall goal, the topic for this particular coaching is to develop a new product idea. Have you any thoughts about the kind of product that you would like to develop? Would it be a kind of small scale individual product, or would it be something bigger and more commercial?
I think small but commercial, like something in large quantities.
Okay, so a small product, but something that has commercial potential, could be produced en masse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can we begin by just exploring the little object as it stands? What do you notice about it?
It looks like metallic item with some kind of hook and bristles on the bottom, and they look kind of sharp. And small button on the bottom.
Okay, and does it have any particular features that you're aware of?
Well, the first thing, it's metallic and it could be sharp.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, the hook is kind of circle, round, well, not really, but oval shape.
Okay, so it's metallic, it could potentially be sharp, it's got a kind of oval shaped hook on it. You mentioned the small, almost like a little button on the bottom that holds the fibers there. What do you think it might be used for as it stands?
I think first idea is some kind of cleaning item, like dish cleaning or bottle cleaning.
Okay, so cleaning dishes, cleaning bottles. Any other thoughts?
Maybe something for catching something inside those bristles.
Okay. So catching something, trapping something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to that?
Maybe a fancy wine stopper.
A fancy wine stopper, and why not?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on and start to think about what this could become. What could you change about this to turn it into a different kind of object?
I think those bristles could be too sharp, so I would make them softer, so they're more like safer.
Okay.
Touching.
So you'd want to make this a safer object by softening.
Yeah.
And what would the purpose be of making a softer, safer object?
Just so in the case if I sell it, so I don't get lawsuit or something, that it's safe for usage.
Okay. And have you got any ideas about the kind of product you might develop?
I think it could be like a nice Christmas tree decoration.
Okay.
Like you could use a hook to, well, as a hook, and then maybe add some kind of lights on the bottom, so like a sprinkles, something, so it's shinier and more Christmassy.
Okay, so you could add lights to it. You could make it more decorative.
Maybe add like a bauble, so it stands in and it lights up. Nice.
Okay, that's interesting. Any other options apart from a decorative Christmas tree object?
Nothing that I can think of right now.
Okay. For the purposes of speed, let's move on. Okay. How do you feel about that? Are you confident that that's a good potential seller?
Could be.
And what would you want to do next to develop this idea?
I think take this, like make a picture or draw, attach like how I want, like make a prototype, drawing first, and then see how it looks with all my adjustments.
So what would your first steps be, Laura?
To figure out what it is and draw a picture of it.
Okay. And when will you come back to me with that drawing?
Tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Laura.
You're welcome, Ann.
I hope as you listen to that little conversation there that you recognize the kind of movement through the different stages of the coaching process. And one of the nice things about using an exercise like this is that you're playing on very safe ground. There are no right and wrong answers here. There's a real opportunity for the person being coached to develop ideas and look for solutions. And the kind of emotion of practicing coaching in a real situation is taken out of this. I guess you could really talk about this as being coaching for innovation, coaching for ideas generation. But most coaching is about getting the person to actually start to think about positive options that are available to them. And Laura's just put up on the screen there the kind of questions that you could work through. Encouraging the designer to observe and describe the existing object, encouraging the designer to explore many different ways in which the object could be changed, helping the designer to evaluate and choose one of the ideas, and then helping the designer to turn the basic idea into a more robust product description. Just having listened to that, can any of you see any kind of potential uses of that? Is it something that you can see mapping against your own kind of preferred coaching models there? Be interesting to get some feedback from you again via the chat box. So I'll just give you a minute to have a look at those questions and then come back to me with any reactions. No? Well, I will take that as a positive, that you all are happy with that as an example of an activity. If you were to run with an activity like that and practice the coaching, then you have the opportunity, again, to do the changeover that I described after the listening exercise. The person having done the coaching can then become the recipient of coaching questions. So reversing the roles and asking the designer to coach the coach. What can the coach do to improve his or her coaching? And can they set a goal for the next coaching conversation? I'm just going to pause there just to pick up a comment from Katie. In addition to practicing coaching, this activity would also be useful for creative entrepreneurial thinking and methods training. Absolutely, Katie. That was what the activity was actually developed for. And then we realized as we gave the the design coaches the kind of checklist of questions and so on, that it also was a great way of encouraging them to practice the coaching role. It's even more kind of attractive than usual, I think, for the coach to get sucked into this kind of activity. They love to come up with an idea of their own. They love to say, oh, and if you added this to it, or if you made it bigger, or whatever, you could do this with it. And it's quite a fun exercise, and it's fun to watch people catching themselves doing that. So yes, it encourages lateral thinking, Bianca. Yes, it can be useful in a sort of creative way. We've talked about it as being coaching for innovation. But the innovation, if you like, is the context there, and the basic core coaching skills are still being practiced at the same time. Good. Okay, let's move on. I'm just checking the time that I've got here. That's fine. We're doing all right. Many of you will be familiar with a broad range of experiential learning tools anyway. And I think it can be really interesting to look at some of your existing tools, maybe things you use for team building or you use for team problem solving, and thinking about how you could actually make those into an interesting coaching exercise. So I'm just going to describe to you a process of using one of my favorite experiential learning activities and set it up as a coaching development activity. And I'm going to take the idea of colorblind. I don't know whether you're all familiar with colorblind. I guess a lot of you will be. This is a team-based communication exercise in which people are wearing blindfolds and using verbal communication anyway to solve a problem about the numbers and colors of a set of components that form the game. In the exercise, the people taking part wear blindfolds. And if I want to use this as a coaching exercise, what I do is I set it up as peer coaching. So I ask half the group to participate in the exercise, and I ask the other half to take on a one-to-one observation role. Those observers will become the coaches at the end of during and at the end of the exercise. One of the quite nice things about wearing the blindfold is that the people wearing those blindfolds are much less conscious of the fact that they're being observed. They don't feel as though they're being stared at, and they quite often forget in the intensity of the exercise that they are being observed. Working with the one-to-one observation, I run the exercise as normal, just following the normal kind of brief. I ask the coaches to observe carefully, to make some notes about the effectiveness of the contribution that their partner is making. And after about 15 minutes of the exercise, I call a timeout and I ask the coaches to meet with the person that they've been observing. The coach then has about 5 minutes to work through a practice coaching process in which the goal is to help their partner to identify one behavioral change that they can make when they go back into the exercise in order to be more effective within the team. Now, this is a very straightforward kind of coaching process. It's very kind of work related in that it is asking someone to focus on a goal related to a behavioral change. Once the goal's been identified, they explore options about how that might be done, and they set a target. When I go back into the exercise, this is what I'm going to try and do differently. We repeat that process about 2/3 of the way through the exercise. They have the opportunity to assess whether their performance changed as a result of the coaching session, to review it, and to complete that process again. Immediately after the exercise, they repeat the process a 3rd time, but this time with the emphasis on the coaching, leading them to think about how they are going to change a behavior or how they're going to do something differently once they get back into the workplace. So it becomes much more of a performance coaching session. My experience is it works really well because they've got real content to work with. They've got the real observed behaviors to work with. The coach is steering towards a behavioral change, but the choice is absolutely down to the person being coached. And as in all the other exercise examples that I've given you, there's then the opportunity for the person being coached to flip roles and to talk about how helpful, useful the coaching was. Did the coach stick to the coaching principles? Were they listening effectively? Did they help particularly in the movement to action phase? Because this is one of the real key areas, I think, that coaches sometimes find quite difficult. I understand the issues. We've talked about possible solutions. What is it we're actually going to do next? So this is a nice way of linking from a preferred activity into a coaching process and then into some personal development planning after the activity. Right. Thank you, Lara. All of the things we've talked about now have been pretty much about helping other people to develop the core skills of coaching. And what I wanted to do as we kind of move towards the later part of this webinar is to think about a tool or an activity that might be particularly useful to experienced coaches working one-to-one. And the activity that I've chosen is called voyage mapping. And this is based on a set of materials that have been designed for individual use. And it's about working with the metaphor of a journey. It's about thinking about the process of coaching someone from where they are now to a destination that they set and is agreed. And this uses some very, very simple tools. It uses a map, which is a write-on, wipe-off laminated sheet. And on that map, there are start points, mid-journey rest stops, and destinations. And also, there are a whole range of different visual images, okay? So for example, we may have the sea monster, the scary monster. What might that scary monster represent on the journey? It could be anxieties or concerns. How am I going to overcome the worries that I've got about adopting this particular course of action or letting something go? It could be being stuck in the doldrums. How do I break out of this situation I'm in where there doesn't seem to be much energy, there doesn't seem to be much wind in my sails? How do I raise the wind, as it were, to help me to move forward? Okay. There's an image of a party, a celebration. What are the milestones on the journey? What are the points at which I'm going to celebrate success? How do I define those points? How do I understand what success looks like? And how am I going to celebrate and reward myself if I get to that point? Maybe there will be some icebergs on the way. These are potential problems that I know lie ahead, but I don't know quite how big they'll be. I don't know the scale of them, and I don't know exactly when I'm going to encounter them. There also are really positive things in there. We have a little image of a merchant here bringing, or a supplier bringing resources onto the boat. Who are the people who can support me? Who are the people who resource me? Where do I get the things that I need in order to be able to see this through? And, excuse me, I've just dropped one. Here we go. What's in the treasure chest? What are the treasures, the hidden treasures that I'm going to find if I continue on this journey? What are the things I might discover about myself, about other people, about the environment in which I work or live? So the coach works with the coachee, the individual, and uses the concept of the map. One of the real key points here is the goal setting. Okay? Just as you see in the picture there, two people working together using the imagery. Graham, the coach in the RSVP shirt there, is clearly working with a partner who's annotating the map and using the imagery to help to focus the thinking. One of the really important things is getting the end point right, the destination right. What is it that we actually want to achieve here? How will we know when we've got there? We sometimes refer to this as Destination Island. What will we find on Destination Island? Is there a way of describing the things that I'm going to be able to, the things that I value, the things that I'm seeking? How do I really get that clear in my own mind? And then the coach can work with the imagery and again, following a fairly standard traditional coaching process. So at the start of the journey, what's the current situation? Which of these images would represent that? Does it seem grey and foggy with your little eyes peering out through the sea mist there? Are you already aware that you're facing some big icebergs? Is your energy really low? Or are you excited and stimulated and, in communication with lots of other people about something that you see as being a really exciting journey towards a new horizon? So using the image to explore that current situation. Then thinking about what lies ahead. Then beginning to map some of the possible actions that can be taken to take advantage of the opportunities that lie on this journey and also to avoid some of the problems. Knowing that you perhaps are taking on quite a big personal challenge, who can support you? What are the things you could do now to help to minimize the problems that you anticipate? And then finally, as they move towards the island, what is it, having got there, that you then can take hold of, put into your treasure chest, keep, that will resource you on the next journey? So this is, I think, just an engaging and interesting way of using an activity, using some resources, using some imagery, some metaphor, in helping people to work through a coaching process. And on the occasions when I've used it, it's interesting how the image quite often triggers ideas and stimulates thoughts that the person being coached may not have got to without the picture. Yeah. And it's also interesting looking at the whole range of different interpretations of those images. So for example, the sharks here. Who are the sharks? Are they your bank? Are they your competitors? Do the sharks represent things that you perceive as being dangerous on the journey that lies ahead? It's as I say, a nice activity to use, and it's one that enables you to work at whatever level you as a coach and the person you're coaching is operating at. Okay, again, any thoughts or questions about using that as a coaching tool? Again, I'll just give you a minute or two to respond. Okay. I've shown you some of the coaching cards that we have as part of the RSVP portfolio, and I showed you a set specific to the GROW model. There are also in the range specific coaching cards for coaching for resilience, which are based much more around developing the emotional skills needed to be resilient. There are performance appraisal coaching cards as well. So when the coaching is very specifically towards appraisal of current skills and future development. And other things that support good coaching, positive focused, solution focused coaching. Lovely little set of cards here called At My Best, strengths cards. Some of you may be familiar with these, but these can be particularly useful, I think, in just getting people, particularly at the early stages of coaching, to think about their own particular skills and competences. And they are simply words and images. And again, these kind of tools are simply triggers. They're additional resources that a good coach can use, particularly at times if the coachee is getting a bit stuck or bogged down. Yeah. I don't know whether it's specific to Scotland, but I think it's something cultural. The number of times I ask people, tell me something you're really good at, or what do you think you're really skilled in? And the response very often comes back as, well, I'm not very good at, or, well, I suppose I'm not bad at. Now, this is very different from perhaps working in the States, where people tell you they're brilliant at everything all of the time. But sometimes people can get into a bit of a negative mindset, particularly if they've been struggling with the same kind of issue from time to time. And a simple activity like these At My Best cards can be a great way of getting people to start to be more realistic about the skills that they do have and the tools that they have in their own resource bag. And a good coach will be focusing on those kind of things and trying to draw them out. So that's pretty much the content that I wanted to take you through in this webinar. We're about 45 minutes in, I think. So I'm going to shut up there, and if you just have a look at your chat box, Laura has put in links into that for any of the materials that I've referenced today. I'm happy to stay on the line and answer any specific questions or have a chat to anyone who would like to. I'll stay here until I see that everyone's signed off. And of course, we would really welcome you contacting us, furthering the conversation. And again, Laura has put up the slide, I think, with our contact details on it, but I'm sure you all have that anyway. So thank you very much for attending. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to hearing from you. And as I say, I'm happy to stay here for a while and answer any questions you may want to ask. But feel free at this point to log out of this meeting if you need to leave. Thanks again for your time.